She balanced 4 heavy plates on her left arm. The billionaire was laughing at her, mocking her in front of his wealthy friends. He asked her, the waitress, what she thought about his $40 billion business deal. It was supposed to be a joke, but she said 5 words that made every fork at that table stop moving. 5 words that would bring a corrupt empire crashing down. 5 words that would change both of their lives forever. She said, "You're being set up." What that billionaire didn't know was that the woman serving his coffee used to move billions of dollars with a single keystroke. She had been one of the most brilliant financial minds in the country, until the man he was about to do business with destroyed her entire life and forced her into hiding. Now, 3 years later, she was about to get her revenge. And it would be absolutely beautiful. This is the true story of the waitress who knew too much. Stay with me, because what happens next will leave you speechless. Welcome to Voice of Granny. While you are here, please hit the subscribe button and comment your view on the story and where you're watching from. Let me tell you about a woman named Elena. At 30 years old, her entire world had shrunk down to the 4 walls of a fancy restaurant called the Sterling Room in downtown Chicago. This wasn't just any restaurant. This was the kind of place where rich businessmen ate $100 steaks and complained if their wine wasn't the perfect temperature. Elena was good at her job. Really good. She moved between tables like a ghost, never making mistakes, never drawing attention to herself. That's exactly what she wanted. To be invisible. To be forgotten. But Elena wasn't always a waitress. No, her story was much more complicated than that. 3 years ago, Elena had a different name. Back then, she was Elena Rodriguez, one of the brightest financial analysts in the entire country. She worked for a powerful investment firm, and her boss was a man named Vincent Calloway. Vincent wasn't just her boss. He was her mentor, the person who taught her everything about the world of money and investments. Elena had created something special for Vincent. A computer program so smart, so precise, that it made him his first $1 billion. She trusted him completely. She thought he was like a father to her. But then Elena discovered something terrible. Vincent wasn't just making money the honest way. He was stealing. Tiny amounts from thousands of transactions, all hidden in secret bank accounts overseas. It was brilliant. It was illegal. And Elena could see it all because she had built the system. She was 26 years old and naive. She thought Vincent would thank her for finding his mistake. She thought he would fix it. Instead, Vincent destroyed her. He took all that stolen money and put it in bank accounts with her name on them. He created fake emails that looked like she wrote them. He built an entire mountain of lies, and when the federal agents came, they came for her, not him. Who were they going to believe? A 26-year-old girl, or Vincent Calloway, the man whose face was on every business magazine in America? Elena ran. She had to. She emptied her small savings account, changed her name to Elena Grant using her mother's maiden name, and disappeared into the crowd of millions in Chicago. The brilliant analyst became a waitress. The woman who once moved billions of dollars now counted her tips in single-dollar bills. For 3 years, she lived in the shadows. She watched Vincent get richer. She watched his face on television, on magazine covers, celebrated as a genius. And every night, she went home to her tiny apartment and wondered if she would spend the rest of her life hiding. That all changed on one cold November evening. The Sterling Room's most important table, table 7 in the corner, was occupied by a man named Richard Sterling. Yes, the restaurant was named after his family. Richard was one of the richest men in America. His investment company, Sterling Investments, was so powerful that when Richard made a decision, the stock market moved. Tonight, Richard was celebrating. He was loud, confident, surrounded by his nephew Daniel and 2 men who laughed at every word Richard said. They were talking about a huge business deal. Richard was about to buy a technology company called Vertex Tech for $40 billion. $40 billion. That's more money than most people could even imagine. Elena was carrying 4 heavy plates of food when she walked past their table. Her arms ached, but she had done this thousands of times. She could carry the weight without thinking. Then Daniel, Richard's nephew, noticed her. He was drunk and bored, and he had a mean idea. "Uncle Richard," Daniel said loudly, "you always talk about getting opinions from regular people. Why don't you ask her?" He pointed at Elena like she was an object, not a person. "Ask her what she thinks about your big deal. I'm sure she has some really smart ideas from the kitchen." The whole table laughed. Richard leaned back in his chair with a cruel smile on his face. He looked at her name tag. "Elena," he said, making sure everyone nearby could hear him. You bring coffee and clean tables. What's your opinion on $40 billion business deals? Time seemed to stop. Elena stood there, her back to them, her plates balanced on her left arm. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought it might break through her chest. She was supposed to say, "I'm sorry, sir. I don't know anything about that." She was supposed to smile and walk away and let them have their laugh. But then they said the name. Vincent Calloway. They mentioned that Vincent had been interested in Vertex Tech too. Something inside Elena snapped. Or maybe something that had been broken finally healed. She turned around slowly. She didn't look at Richard. She looked at the business papers sticking out of his briefcase on the seat beside him. "You're being set up," she said quietly. The laughter died instantly. The entire restaurant seemed to go silent. Richard sat up straight, and the cruel smile disappeared from his face. "What did you just say?" His voice was dangerous now, not playful. Elena met his eyes. For 3 years, she had kept her head down, kept her intelligence hidden. But these men had said Vincent's name. They had reminded her of who she used to be. Her voice was steady now. Strong. "I said you're being set up. You think you're buying Vertex Tech's amazing technology. But you're really buying their debts. Vincent Calloway isn't your competitor. He's your enemy. And he's using this deal to destroy you." The fork that someone was holding clattered onto the plate. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Richard Sterling stared at the waitress who had just said 5 words that changed everything. Richard Sterling wasn't a stupid man. He hadn't become a billionaire by ignoring warnings. But he also wasn't the kind of man who took advice from waitresses. "Keep talking," he said. His voice had changed completely. The joking was over. This was the voice of a man who sensed danger. Elena carefully placed the last plate on the table. Her hands weren't shaking anymore. After 3 years of hiding, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. She felt like herself again. "Vertex Tech looks valuable on paper," she said. "But all their real value has been stripped away and hidden inside a shell company called Phoenix Holdings. Vincent has been working with Vertex's chief financial officer for months. They've been lying about what the company is really worth." Richard's face went pale. "Phoenix Holdings," he whispered. "That's buried in the paperwork. Page 300-something. Nobody pays attention to it." "Vincent is counting on that," Elena continued. "His plan is simple. Let you complete the purchase. Then, 6 weeks later, Phoenix Holdings will declare bankruptcy. When it does, all those hidden debts will come crashing down on you. Vertex will be worthless, but you'll be locked in. You'll lose $20 billion overnight. Your company's credit rating will be destroyed. And while you're bleeding and desperate, Vincent will launch a takeover bid. He doesn't want Vertex Tech. He wants your entire company, and he wants to buy it for almost nothing while you're weak." The silence at the table was complete. Daniel's mouth was hanging open. The 2 other men looked terrified. Richard reached into his pocket with a shaking hand. He pulled out a black credit card and threw it on the table. "Daniel, pay the entire bill. You 2-inch," he pointed at his business associates. "Get out. You're fired. Get out of my sight." "Richard, what's happening?" one of them stammered. "Get out," Richard roared. The 3 men scrambled away from the table like frightened animals. Richard turned back to Elena, and his eyes were cold and sharp. "You have 10 seconds to decide," he said. "My car is outside. You're coming with me. If you refuse, I will have this restaurant shut down by tomorrow morning, and I will find you anyway." "Who are you?" Elena took off her apron and dropped it on the table. After 3 years of hiding, she was done running. "My name is Elena Rodriguez," she said. "And Vincent Calloway didn't just compete with me. He's the man who destroyed my entire life." The ride in Richard's car was silent. Elena stared out the window at the rain-covered streets of Chicago, watching the lights blur past. She was wearing her cheap waitress uniform, sitting in a car that cost more than most houses. They arrived at Sterling Tower, a massive building of glass and steel that seemed to touch the clouds. Security guards stared at Elena's uniform, but said nothing when they saw Richard's expression. They took a private elevator to the top floor. Richard's office was enormous, with windows that showed the entire city spread out below them like a blanket of stars. "Dim the lights," Richard said to the empty room, and the lights obeyed. "Lock this floor." A quiet click told them they were alone. He turned to face her. "Elena Rodriguez, the analyst who supposedly stole $900 million from Stratton Financial. The woman who vanished before she could be arrested. You're a fugitive." "I was framed," Elena said simply. There was no emotion in her voice anymore. She had said these words in her head 1,000,000 times, but nobody had ever listened. Everyone says they were framed, Richard shot back. Give me one reason to believe you. I don't care if you believe me, Elena said, walking to the enormous window. You asked who I am. I told you. You asked how I know about your deal. I'm telling you. Vincent Calloway was my mentor. I built the computer program that made him rich. Then I discovered he was using it to steal money. When I confronted him, he framed me for his crimes. He had lawyers, fake evidence, everything. I was nobody. He was Vincent Calloway. So I ran. She turned to face Richard, and her eyes were blazing now. For 3 years, I've been hiding. I've gone from analyzing billion-dollar investments to serving soup. I've watched Vincent get more powerful, more celebrated, while I counted nickels and dimes and tips. And then tonight, at your table, your nephew said his name. You talked about the deal. And I saw the papers in your briefcase. Elena's voice grew stronger. I know how Vincent thinks. I know how he operates. Because I taught him half of what he knows. And when I looked at those papers, I saw my own work. He's using the same trick he used to frame me. The same shell company structure. The same hidden transfers. He's so arrogant, he thinks nobody else can see it. But I can see it. I built this kind of system. I know exactly how it works. Richard walked to a cabinet and poured 2 glasses of water. He handed one to Elena. If what you're saying is true, he said slowly, you just saved my company. But you also just confessed to being a wanted fugitive. Why would you risk exposing yourself? Elena took a sip of water. Her hand was steady. Because Vincent used my work. My signature. My code. And because I'm tired of hiding. I'm tired of being afraid. He took everything from me. My career, my reputation, my life. And I just watched him about to do the same thing to you, using my own playbook. She set down the glass. You asked who I am. I'm the woman Vincent Calloway fears most. I'm the only person alive who can prove what he really is. Richard Sterling studied this woman in her cheap uniform, who spoke with the confidence of a general. All right, Elena Rodriguez. You want back in the game? You're in. But my own company believes in this deal. Some of my own people might be working for Vincent. You'll be fighting not just him, but my own employees. Elena smiled for the first time. It was a cold smile. A warrior's smile. Give me a computer, she said. Give me 72 hours. I'll prove everything. The 78th floor of Sterling Tower was called the data center. This was where dozens of brilliant analysts worked day and night, staring at computer screens, making sense of numbers that would make most people's heads spin. When Richard Sterling stepped out of the elevator at 2 a.m. with a woman in a waitress uniform, every person in the room stopped working and stared. Listen up, Richard's voice commanded instant silence. This is Elena Rodriguez. She's a special consultant. She has my complete authority. Give her whatever she needs. Full access to all Vertex tech files. Everything. A severe-looking woman in an expensive suit stood up. Her name was Patricia Hayes, and she was Richard's head of risk management. She looked at Elena like someone had just dragged garbage into her pristine office. A special consultant? Patricia's voice dripped with contempt. Richard, with all respect, who is this person? She's the person who's going to tell us if we're about to walk off a cliff, Richard said. Get her access. Now. Patricia, her face tight with anger, led Elena to an empty computer station. Here. We'll set up your security clearance. It might take a while. I don't need a new login, Elena said, sitting down. Her fingers were already flying across the keyboard. Just give me guest access. I can work with that. Guest access won't get you into the encrypted Vertex files, Patricia said with a smug smile. She thought she had won. 30 seconds later, Elena was looking at files that should have been impossible to access. Patricia's face went white. The other analysts who were watching took a step back, shocked. Lock this station, Elena said, not looking up. Nobody sees my screen. Get me coffee, Black. And I need the original paper copies of all Vertex Tech financial statements. The actual physical documents. I want to see the real paper. For the next 6 hours, Elena was a storm of motion. She wasn't just reading the financial data. She was living inside it. She cross-referenced international transactions. She pulled up satellite images of Vertex's factories in Asia and discovered they were abandoned buildings. The other analysts tried to work, but they kept stealing glances at this strange woman who moved through their complex systems like she had built them herself. Richard watched from his office above the floor. He could see Patricia and another man, Gerald Thompson, his chief financial officer, huddled in the corner, whispering and shooting angry looks at Elena. Elena was deep in the numbers, tracing the flow of money. Everything she suspected was true. The fake valuations, the hidden debts, the Luxembourg shell company. But there was one final piece missing. The smoking gun that would prove Vincent's entire scheme. And it was protected by encryption she had never seen before. "It's not here," she whispered to herself, frustration mounting. The sun was starting to rise outside the windows, painting the sky in shades of gray and gold. Patricia approached Elena's desk, her smile confident and cruel. "Having trouble, consultant? Maybe you've hit a wall. Some of us have been working on this for months. We're very confident in our analysis." "You're confident because you're looking at exactly what Vincent wants you to see," Elena said quietly. Then she stopped. She leaned back and rubbed her tired eyes. The encryption wasn't just a password. It was biometric. It needed a specific person in a specific location to unlock the final file. Elena looked at Patricia's smug face. Then she looked at Gerald across the room, watching them nervously. Richard had mentioned that Gerald was the one who had approved the audit reports. A terrible, brilliant idea formed in Elena's mind. "You're right, Patricia," Elena said suddenly. "I am at a dead end. I can't find the final proof." Patricia's smile grew wider. "I'm sorry to hear that. I'll let Richard know you tried your best. But you know what's interesting?" Elena continued casually. "While I was searching, I found something completely unrelated. Just a curiosity, really. There are wire transfers in Sterling's internal system. Same amount, every month for 6 months. From something called Meridian Digital." Patricia's smile froze on her face. "These transfers go to a private account," Elena continued, pretending to study her screen. "And the bank routing number looks familiar. It's the same bank you use for your paycheck, Patricia." Patricia stopped breathing. "So I looked up who owns Meridian Digital," Elena said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "It's hidden behind several proxy companies. But at the end of that chain is Vincent Calloway." The color drained from Patricia's face. "You're the head of risk management, Patricia. You're the one person who could have buried the red flags about Phoenix Holdings. You're the person who approved the questionable audits. And you've been getting paid very well by Vincent to do exactly that." Elena stood up. "But here's the thing. You're not just getting paid. You're the key. The biometric lock on that encrypted file? It needs you to unlock it. You're Vincent's inside agent." "This is insane," Patricia whispered, but her voice was shaking. "I'm calling security." "Go ahead," Elena said calmly. "But while I was digging, I moved every cent from that Meridian account into an escrow account controlled by the Securities and Exchange Commission. Your insurance policy is gone, Patricia. You have one chance to save yourself. Unlock that file. Show me the truth." Patricia looked around the room. Every analyst was staring at her now. Gerald looked like he might faint. Richard was standing at his office door, his face like stone. Patricia was trapped. Her betrayal was exposed for everyone to see. With shaking hands, she walked to her own computer. She placed her thumb on a scanner and typed a long password. On Elena's screen, a new folder appeared. Project Trojan. Elena opened it, and her heart sank. It was worse than she thought. Not just debt. Not just fraud. Fake patents. False research. Criminal conspiracy. This wasn't just going to hurt Richard. This was going to destroy him. She was about to open the final file when a voice echoed across the silent floor. Well, Elena Rodriguez." Elena's blood turned to ice. She turned around slowly. Standing by the elevator, wearing a $1,000 suit and a cruel smile, was Vincent Calloway. "I thought you were serving coffee," he said. "This is quite the career change." The 78th floor felt like all the oxygen had been sucked out of it. Elena hadn't seen Vincent Calloway in 3 years. 3 years of hiding, of fear, of shame. And now here he was, standing 20 feet away, smiling at her like this was all a wonderful joke. Vincent looked exactly the same. Perfectly styled hair going gray at the temples. Expensive suit that probably cost more than Elena made in 6 months at the restaurant. That confident smile that had once made her feel safe, but now made her stomach turn. "Richard," Vincent said, walking into the room like he owned it. "I came by for our pre-celebration meeting. We're signing the papers on Friday, after all. But imagine my surprise when I heard you'd brought in my old assistant." He looked at Elena. "You look terrible, by the way. Waitressing doesn't suit you." Richard stepped forward, putting himself between Vincent and Elena. "Calloway, you're not welcome here. Get out." "Oh, I think I am welcome," Vincent said smoothly. He gestured toward Gerald and Patricia. Gerald, Patricia, tell Richard what you told me last night. Tell him this deal is solid. Tell him that his waitress is feeding him lies. Gerald, seeing a chance to save himself, nodded quickly. He's right, Richard. This woman is a known criminal. She's trying to sabotage the biggest deal in this company's history. Patricia and I have run the numbers a dozen times. They're perfect. You're a liar, Gerald, Richard growled. Am I? Vincent interrupted. Or is she? Think about it, Richard. Her word against your chief financial officer, your head of risk management, and the combined findings of the top auditing firms in the world. Who do you think your board will believe? Who will the government believe? He had a point. A terrifying point. Elena was a fugitive. Her word meant nothing against the entire financial establishment. Elena had been silent, her hands gripping the edge of her desk. She looked at Vincent, the man who had been like a father to her, the man who had destroyed her life. You're right, Vincent, Elena said quietly. Her voice was shaking. The evidence is circumstantial. The Meridian account, the biometric lock, it's just noise. It's not real proof. Richard looked at her, shocked and disappointed. He had gambled everything on her, and she was giving up. Vincent's smile was blinding. He thought he had won. See, Richard? Even your expert admits it. Now let's be reasonable. Fire her, and let's go sign papers that will make us both very, very rich. Richard's face showed bitter disappointment. He had bet on Elena, and she had folded. I only have one thing left, Elena said, her voice cracking. She reached under the desk and pulled out her old, worn leather bag. The one she had carried to the restaurant every day for 3 years. When I ran from my apartment, she said, the federal agents took my computers, my phones, everything. But they missed one thing. She unzipped a side pocket and pulled out a small black external hard drive. Vincent's smile started to fade. His eyes fixed on that drive. This is my backup, Elena said. From 2019. Before you framed me. She looked up, and suddenly the tears were gone. Her voice was steady now. Strong. You see, Vincent, I was a very good analyst. I backed up everything, including the original computer program I built for you. And I backed up the original scheme you created. The one you used to frame me. She held up the drive. You're right that the new evidence is weak. But you made one fatal, arrogant mistake. You're not running a new scheme. You're running the exact same scheme again. She plugged the drive into her computer. On her screen, she split the display into 2 columns. On the left, the 2019 fraud code. On the right, the 2025 Vertex Tech fraud code. They were identical, line for line, number for number. It's not my word against yours anymore, Vincent, Elena said. It's your own signature. Twice. It's a confession written in code. And this time, it has your name on it, not mine. Vincent Calloway's face went white. He stared at the screen, at the 2 perfect columns of matching evidence, and he knew his life was over. Richard, who had been watching this entire performance with growing amazement, finally spoke. His voice was cold and final. Patricia, Gerald, you're fired. Security will escort you out. The police will be waiting for you in the lobby. Richard, please, Gerald started, but Richard held up his hand. Get them out of my sight. As the guards dragged Gerald and Patricia away, their protests echoing in the stairwell, Richard turned to Vincent. You came into my home, Richard said quietly. You tried to poison me with my own money. And you used the one person who could stop you as a joke. He picked up his phone. I'm calling the Securities and Exchange Commission right now. The Vertex deal is dead. And you're finished. No, Vincent choked out. He was a cornered animal now, all his charm gone. In one last desperate move, he lunged not at Richard, but at Elena. You, he screamed. You destroyed me. You ruined everything. He never reached her. Richard's bodyguard, a massive man who had been standing quietly in the corner, stepped forward and stopped Vincent with one powerful arm. Vincent hit the floor hard, gasping as security pinned him down. Elena watched the man who had haunted her nightmares for 3 years lying on the floor, broken and defeated. The war was over. After 3 years of hiding, 3 years of fear, 3 years of being invisible, she had won. But as the adrenaline faded and the security guards dragged Vincent away, Elena started shaking. She had won, but she was terrified. Could she really come back to this world? The world that had chewed her up and destroyed her? Richard walked over to her. He looked at this woman in her waitress uniform who had just saved his entire empire. The job is yours, Elena, he said softly. Head of Strategy, Sterling Investments. Build your own team. Name your price. And I'll fund your lawsuit. We'll use this evidence. We'll get your name back. We'll get everything back. Elena looked at his outstretched hand. Then she looked at the trading floor, the screens, the lights. The world that had once been her home. Her hand was shaking as she reached out and took his. The trial was fast. The newspapers called it The Revenge of the Waitress, and Elena hated that headline. It made her sound small, like she was defined by the worst moment of her life. She wasn't a waitress who got revenge. She was a brilliant analyst who had set a perfect trap and won. Vincent Calloway, with no money and no friends left, faced mountains of evidence. The two sets of identical code, laid side by side, were impossible to deny. He pleaded guilty to everything. The judge gave him 40 years in federal prison. For a man his age, it was a life sentence. Elena walked out of that courthouse, ignoring the camera flashes and shouted questions. Her face was calm. The war was finally over. 6 months passed. The noise died down. Elena Rodriguez was no longer a waitress. She was now the head of strategy at Sterling Investments, one of the most powerful positions in American finance. She had a corner office on the top floor. She wore designer suits. She had a salary that made her old self dizzy. But the victory was not a celebration. It was a battlefield. Elena worked 100-hour weeks. She didn't just join Richard's company. She rebuilt it from the ground up. She found all the corruption that Gerald and Patricia had hidden. She created new security systems, new ways of checking for fraud. She designed a computer program that could see in the shadows, that could spot the kind of schemes Vincent had used. Richard gave her complete freedom, and the company, after the shock of the failed Vertex deal, became stronger and more profitable than ever. Elena Rodriguez was back. She had a new office, a new wardrobe, and a new reputation as the sharpest mind on Wall Street. But she didn't trust anyone. She checked everything twice, 3 times. She ate lunch alone at her desk. She was respected. She was feared. But she was isolated. The betrayal had left a scar that wouldn't heal. Then, 8 months after Vincent's arrest, the attacks began. It started small. A shipment of goods that Sterling had invested in got lost, costing $50 million. A major business deal suddenly fell apart when private details leaked to the press. "It's him," Elena said in a board meeting. "It's Vincent. He's in prison, but he's still fighting. He's using his old connections, calling in favors. He's trying to hurt us." The attacks grew worse. A computer trading program started targeting Sterling's investments, driving up prices, costing them money. It was death by 1,000 cuts. The company was bleeding $100 million a week. "It's my program," Elena said, staring at the code on her screen. "The one I built years ago. He's turned it into a weapon. He's using it to hunt us." "Can you stop it?" Richard asked. The boardroom was silent. The company was dying. Elena studied the attack patterns. She saw the aggression, the intelligence. She saw Vincent's signature all over it. He was still arrogant. He still thought he was smarter than her. "I'm not going to stop it," Elena said. A cold smile spread across her face. "I'm going to use it to destroy him completely." For 2 weeks, Sterling's trading floor became a war room. The attacks were relentless. The computer program shadowed their every move, costing them money with every trade. The board was panicking. They were losing. But Elena wasn't panicking. She was teaching the program. For 2 weeks, she let it win. She fed it small, predictable trades. She made it think Sterling was scared, stupid, retreating. "You're just watching us die," one executive shouted at her in a 5 a.m. emergency meeting. Elena didn't even look up from her screen. "I'm not watching," she said quietly. "I'm setting a trap." Later, in Richard's office, she explained her plan. "We're going to lay out bait," she said. "We're going to make it look like we're desperately selling our biggest investment, our stake in Oracle Technologies, for $1 billion. We'll make it look like a panic, like we're trying to cover our losses." "He'll attack," Richard realized. "He'll short the stock, betting the price will collapse." "He'll do more than that," Elena said. "He'll bet everything he has left. Every favor he can call in. He'll try to kill us. But we won't actually be selling. We'll be buying. When we announce a major new partnership with Oracle, the stock price will explode upward. And Vincent, with his massive short position, will be destroyed. Completely. The trap was set. The rumors were carefully leaked. The first small sale was executed. And they watched. "He's taking the bait," an analyst whispered. On the screens, they could see Vincent's program building a massive short position. betting billions that Oracle's stock would crash. For 48 hours, the tension was unbearable. Vincent kept adding to his short position, convinced he was about to deliver the killing blow. He's at maximum leverage, Elena's lead analyst reported. If the stock goes up even 10%, he's wiped out. The final day of trading arrived. 3:45 p.m., 15 minutes until the market closed. Now, Elena said. Hit it. At 3:46, a press release hit every news wire in the world. Oracle announces revolutionary partnership with Sterling Investments. Sterling to increase stake by $2 billion. The stock didn't just go up. It launched like a rocket. In prison, Vincent's screens would have turned from green to red. A short squeeze. He had borrowed stock to sell, betting the price would drop. Now he had to buy it back, but the price was skyrocketing. The higher it went, the more desperate his buying became, which pushed the price even higher. In 5 minutes, every cent Vincent Callaway had ever hidden, every asset connected to his name, was vaporized. At 4 p.m., the closing bell rang. The trap had worked perfectly. Elena closed her laptop. It's done, she said quietly. A month later, Elena stood alone on the private rooftop of Sterling Tower. It was late at night, and the city spread out below her like a map of stars. She held a paper cup of black coffee from a regular coffee shop, a habit from her waitressing days that she refused to give up. The elevator dinged, and Richard stepped out carrying expensive champagne and crystal glasses. A toast, he said, pouring 2 glasses. This is for victories that actually matter. Elena looked at the fancy champagne, then at her simple coffee cup. She didn't reach for the glass. I'm not really a champagne person, Richard. He paused, then smiled. You know what? Me neither. He set both glasses down on the ledge, untouched. He leaned against the railing beside her, just a partner, not a boss. The board approved your new risk division. Your bonus is, well, let's just say it's substantial. Elena nodded, sipping her coffee. Good. We'll need it. I still see gaps in the Singapore expansion. Richard laughed. Always working. We just toppled a titan, Elena. We rewrote your life. Tell me, how does it feel? Elena was quiet for a long moment, looking at the city lights. It feels, she finally said, her voice barely a whisper, like I can finally breathe. Like I've been holding my breath for 3 years, and I just let it out. She turned to him. When I was Elena Rodriguez the first time, I was the prodigy. I was defined by what I could do. Then I was Elena Grant, the victim, the ghost. I was defined by what was done to me. She looked at her reflection in the dark glass. I don't think I'm either of them anymore. Those were roles I was forced to play. Who are you then? Richard asked. Elena took a slow sip of coffee. I'm the woman who learned that the small details matter most. I'm the woman who checks everything twice. I'm the woman who survived. She smiled, a real, genuine smile. And the next time you want my financial advice, Mr. Sterling, it's going to cost you a lot more than a steak dinner. Richard laughed. I'm counting on it, Miss Rodriguez. Elena looked out at Chicago. 3 years ago, she had served this city. Now she understood it. She didn't just work in the financial world anymore. She had mastered it. They had all looked at her, but never seen her. They thought a name tag and a uniform could hide brilliance. They thought shame and fear could bury talent. They were wrong. Elena Rodriguez didn't just get her name back. She built a new one from the ashes of the fire that tried to burn her. She proved that intelligence cannot be hidden by circumstances, and that integrity is worth more than any amount of money. Richard had asked for her opinion as a joke. He found an ally who saved his empire. They thought she was just a waitress. They forgot that the woman serving coffee might be the smartest person in the room. So what do you think of Elena's incredible journey? Do you think she got the justice she deserved? How would you have handled being betrayed like that? Let me know in the comments below. If this story moved you, please like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear about triumph over betrayal. And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories every week. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a moment. Thank you for listening.